Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pressing Matters. I'm Scott. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for your support. Today, another tape to disc comparison as promised. This time, it's for an iconic LP from 1958 on the Command label. It's Persuasive Percussion by Terry Snyder and the All-Stars. I'm going to tell you the very interesting results of this shootout in a moment, but first I want to go into a little bit about Command records and Enoch Light. Now, I'll be doing a survey of Command records on their own, so all the LPs are going to be spoken about. I have most of them, and I'm planning to go through a batch at a time and let you know the winners. But, you know, that's going to take some time. For discriminating people who desire the finest in sound, always demand Command. I love that. That's on the back of every Command record. The greatest advance in sound since high fidelity was invented. Yeah. Enoch Light, the man behind Command Records, was quite a showman, I would say, a great marketer, and this is his second venture with a label. His first one was called Grand Award. Grand Award provided the experience and the template for him to launch Command Records when he did. Here's an example of a Grand Award record. You may have seen them. They have like a frame around them for the cover style. And they're early stereophonic discs. The basic template is there, Enoch Light and the Light Brigade. The Light Brigade is a collection of studio musicians, and they do hi-fi recordings of popular tunes of the day. And that's basically the template for Command. However, Command took it a step further and upped everything a notch and used the best of everything. Starting with the jacket design. So these are pretty much the initial gatefold jackets. They weren't really very common at all before this. They were all laminated on the front. So when you see a Command record these days in a bin, it still looks the same. They never get dirty. They just look like this. The cover art was very influential. You see this bold graphic design? It looks simple, but it's actually very sophisticated. It's by an artist called Josef Albers, a very noted visual artist from the Bauhaus school. And he did a few covers at the beginning for Command Records and established their distinctive look. I'm going to show you some of the other ones, but his first ones are the most iconic, I would say. They were on the Persuasive and Provocative Percussion albums. Here's another one. This is Provocative Percussion, Volume 2. You can see that they're just simple but elegant, bold graphic designs like this. Later on, other artists took up the look, like this album here, and continued the idea, but this is the last one I think that Josef Albers did. He's credited on the front of the covers. They're gorgeous, really, really beautiful. Later on, they had other artists, which I'll talk about. Charles Murphy was the art director for this label, so you'll see different artists doing similar type of things like this. All of these records I'm showing you are going to be covered in a future video, so stay tuned for that. Dimension 3, and this one, early one, Mr. Big, Tony Mottola. I have tons of these, literally 100 at least. So we'll get into that in a future video. As I was saying, Enoch Light took everything up a notch with Command. So the jackets were one thing. He also used the best of everything. So the best equipment, the best microphones, the state of the art in stereophonic recording. He also chose the finest, one of the finest engineers around, and that was Robert Fine. You may recognize that name. He was, the Robert Fine from Mercury Living Presence. He moved over to Command to do the engineering for this series. He also chose one of the best mastering engineers around, George Piros. You've probably heard his name too if you're a record collector. The pressing plants varied because these records were extremely popular. This one set the audio world on fire. It was pressed a lot, and it's pressed by many different plants. They did use RCA's Indianapolis plant for the initial pressings, and I have some of those. I also have some later pressings and couple different label designs I'm going to show you. So yeah, the formula was there, the best of everything. And when you look at a Command record, you know that it's a high quality product. Really everything was looked into and perfected. And that's what I love about the Command series. Musically, these are sometimes interesting. They're all over the place. They're kind of demo discs, at least the first ones. They tend to show off and test different aspects of the system. Left and right channel identification, balance, and so forth. But they do it in a way that's fun and musical and doesn't stand out. There's no voice saying left channel, right channel, not like that. It's like you'll hear bongos over here, bongos over there, scratcher here, scratcher there, and it's fun. These were given away when you bought a Magnavox console. They had these special pressings that they did demos with in the audio stores, and you went home with one of these records with your new Magnavox stereo console. And when you think of it, the stereo consoles were very tight, so the speakers were relatively close together, maybe 3 or 4 feet apart at the most. And the wide stereo separation of Command records really showed off the stereo. So when they went home and they said, hey, you got to hear my new stereo, people were like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's fun today too. It really is. And this is one of the best examples of Command's art. The Terry Snyder All-Stars. Terry Snyder was a brilliant percussionist. He's joined here by some of the label mates on Command. Two of the most well-known are Dick Hyman, who was a keyboard player, and Tony Mottola, who's guitar. But you'll see other famous names on these albums, including Doc Severinsen, Irby Green, and so forth. Inside, you'll get a description of each track and what to listen for. They talk about the tonality of the instruments and different things like that. So you'll hear all kinds of percussion on here: xylophones, bongos, drums, scratchers, tambourines, maracas, everything, plus guitar and piano, chimes, and it's kind of like a hi-fi spectacular. I'm very fortunate to have this. I found it in my vault just recently. I know I have 2 of these. I don't know where the other one is. The other one is volume 2. And after hearing this, I really want to get my hands on it. So let's get into the sonic evaluation and some of the things that have come up, some questions I have. If you watched the last video, you know that the process for this was to level match the Revox A77 to the system. So when I switch back and forth between inputs for the LP or the tape, the volume is not an issue. It's not in the equation. It's exactly the same. This set the field for a close examination, but I got to tell you that this wasn't close at all. This tape I played a few weeks back for Oswaldo when he came over. We were setting up something. We were doing the Doors comparison, the Doors UHQR thing. And before he left, I said, Os, you have to hear this tape I discovered. I said, it's unbelievable. We put it on, and the room filled with sound. And he was like, oh my God. It's amazing. It's amazing what they did with the technology at the time. And this tape pushed that technology. When I hear it against the LP, when the tape comes on, it, like I said, it fills the room with a deep, low bass, a huge enveloping soundstage, really natural sound on all the instruments, wide separation. It's a delight. It's an oral delight to hear this tape. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Now you have to remember that this disc was a demo disc back in the day. It's considered state of the art. This particular pressing is the gray label. I have the second label here as well. The first time I did the evaluation, I put on the second pressing. I hadn't located this first one yet. And I was like switching back and forth, and every time I switched to the LP, everything shrank. It was still very clear, brilliant. It was very brilliant, actually. When I talked about the differences in the last shootout, I said the piano was really brilliant on the LP, but I ended up preferring the tape for the reduction of distortion in the classical music realm. On this one, there was no contest. Every time I switched to the LP, the soundstage got smaller, the instruments got a little more bright and brilliant, and it didn't really work as well. Scratchers, tambourines, anything with high frequency content sounded emphasized too much. And I went back and forth, and every time I went back to the tape, I was like, this is natural. This sounds gorgeous. Gorgeous, big, lush, warm analog sound. And when I went back to the LP, it closed down again, and it was bright and clear and detailed. This got me thinking, what is it in these two evaluations? Is it going to be a trend across all the tapes? Or is it something else? Is it that the Revox, gone over by this magician Gio in Italy, is a super deck and produces lovely, warm analog sound? Or is it this? And this is the thought I had. I'm wondering, and this might be the first time I've had a chance to really evaluate this, I'm wondering if the Hana ML, being a moving coil, is finally showing its true color against the tape. That it emphasizes detail a little bit. It has a rising top end. And this is something I knew about moving coils going into it years ago. But the prevailing wisdom was moving coil is the way to go for an audiophile. You want that detail. You want all that extra information and brilliance. But if you've watched my videos over the several months, you know that I don't really care for that kind of sound. And I've worked to kind of reduce that kind of sound. It never occurred to me that the cartridge could have so much influence. I thought, I've got a good cartridge. I have a Hana ML. It's supposed to be great. And it is great. It's brilliant, incisive, detailed, lush, and sometimes warm. It's a beautiful cartridge. There's no question about it. But hearing it against the tape, it didn't sound as natural. And this is what I brought up to another audiophile who's deep into the analog industry professionally. I said, why is it that this is happening? And he said, you're discovering something that I discovered long ago. Personally, I prefer moving magnet cartridges for their more natural presentation. The moving coil is a little zingy sounding, and it doesn't sound like real music. And I said, you know what? I think you might be right, because this is the impression that I've got so often on my system. And the SL was like the worst for this. The ML was much better, But, you know, I've added tubes to the system. I've played with loading. I've played with VTA. I go through all that if you go back in my reviews, trying to to reduce this high frequency emphasis. He said, I think you should try a moving magnet cartridge, just for curiosity. I think you'll be very surprised, and it might be exactly to your taste. Be that as it may. These are questions I'm pondering now. This reel-to-reel tape is spectacular. If you are into tape and you have a player and you ever see this, do get it. I think you'll love it. It has, musically, some of the cuts are like exotica sounding. It's space age bachelor pad music for sure. A lot of fun, really a lot of fun, as is everything on the command label. We'll go through this as I take the trip down memory lane with Command Records. But until next time, I'm Scott for the Pressing Matters. Let me know what you think about this, and we'll see you next time.